Hello and welcome to a special Briefings Direct podcast coming to you from the 2017 SAP Ariba Live Conference in Las Vegas. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Inter Arbor Solutions, your host here the week of March 20 as we explore the latest in collaborative commerce and learn how innovative companies are leveraging the networked economy. Our next digital business thought leadership panel discussion examines the major opportunity from bringing blockchain technology to business procurement and supply chain management. We'll explore how blockchain's unique capabilities can provide a comprehensive visibility across global supply chains for far simpler verification of authenticity, security, and ultimately control. To learn more about how blockchain is poised to impact and improve supply chain risk and management, please join me now in welcoming our guests. We're here with Joe Fox, Senior Vice President for Business Development and Strategy at SAP Ariba. Welcome back, Joe.
Thanks, Dana. It's good to be here.
Good to have you here. We're also joined by Leanne Kemp, the founder and CEO of Everledger, and that's based in London. Welcome, Leanne.
Thank you, Joe. It's great to be here.
Good to have you here. Joe, let's start with you. Blockchain it's emerged as a methodology running cryptocurrency Bitcoin, as most people are aware of it. It's a digitally shared record of transactions maintained by a network of computers, not necessarily with a centralized authority. What could this, of all things, be used for powerfully when it comes to gaining supply chain integrity?
Well, Dana, you're right. Blockchain did start in the Bitcoin area, more of a peer-to-peer consumer functionality. A lot of the capabilities of blockchain have been recognized as important for new areas of innovation. I'd say the new areas of innovation are around what I would call trusted commerce. Trusted commerce is adding the ability in a interaction between buyers and sellers and third parties, more visibility, and the ability to leverage blockchain for asset tracking. Not just asset tracking in context of the buyer itself shipping or the seller themselves receiving, the buyer themselves receiving and the seller shipping, but in context of where is the good in transit. What do I need to do to protect that good? What is the transfer of funds associated with that important asset? And even areas of other applications like possibly an insurance aspect or some kind of ownership proof.
So, Joe, it sounds to me like we're adding lots more metadata to a process. What's different when you apply that through blockchain than you would if you were doing it through a platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. So actually, blockchain in and of itself is kind of like cloud from the perspective of it's a new innovation at the platform layer. So it really ends up, what do you do with it? What I like to say is a chain is only as valuable as the external trust that it inherits. And the external trust it inherits is the proof of what you've put on the chain digitally and the proof of who's taking it off and in what way they've controlled taking it off the chain digitally. As we associate a chain transaction or a posting to the ledger with its original transactions within the Ariba network, we actually add a lot of provenance to that single blockchain record. That's the real key, marrying the transactional world in the B2B with this new trusted commerce capability that comes with blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Well, Leanne, we have you here because we want to hear about a prime example of where blockchain is being used outside of its original adoption. So tell me first about Everledger, and then tell me what you saw in blockchain that made you think it was applicable to a much wider business capability.
So Everledger, we're a fast-moving startup in this space. We began in April of 2015, so it's actually our birthday this week. Yeah, fantastic. We've applied the technology in the diamond industry to bring transparency to the once opaque. And what did I see in the technology? And at the very core of cryptocurrency, they were solving the problem of double spend. They were solving the problem of transfer of value. And we could translate those very two powerful concepts into an industry called the diamond industry. So at the heart of the diamond industry, beyond the physical object itself, is certification. And certificates in the diamond industry is a currency of trade. Diamonds are cited on websites around the world in retailers, and they're mostly sold off the merit of the certification. And so we were able to see the potential of the cryptocurrency, but we could decouple the currency from the ledger. And we were able to then use the synthesis of the currency as a way to transfer value or transfer ownership or transfer custody. And of course, diamonds is a girl's best friend, so we might as well start there.
All right. Now, a lot of times we'll have a new technology and we'll say, wow, where can we put that to use? But we need to have a problem to solve. So what is the problem that was in the diamond industry that you're solving? What was not possible that now is?
So there are a number of things happening in our industry. I mean, the industry boasts some pretty impressive numbers. Firstly, it's been around for 130 years, and most of the relationships and buyers and sellers in that industry have survived generation upon generation of a gentleman's handshake and trust. But the industry itself has been binded so tightly with those relationships, and as time has passed and generations have passed, what we're starting to see is a glacial melt. Some of the major players have sold off entities into other regions, and now that gentleman's handshake needs to be transposed into an electronic form. Some of the major players in the market, of course, still reside today, but most of the data under their control sits in a siloed environment. And even the machines that are on the pipeline that help provide identity to the physical object are also black boxed in terms of data. So we're able to bring a business network to an existing market. It's global. 81 countries around the world trade in rough diamonds. And of course, the value of diamonds increases as it passes through its evolutionary chain. And we're able to bring an aggregated set of data, but not only that, transpose the human element of trust that's largely existed for 130 years. The gentleman's handshake, the chit of paper and the promise to pay is how this industry has built 130 years of trade. And we're able to transpose that into a set of electronic form technologies, blockchain, smart contracts, cryptography and machine vision, and we're able to take forward hopefully a technology platform that will see transactional trust being embedded well beyond my lifetime for generations to come.
All right, Joe, we've just heard how this is a problem-solution tension in the diamond industry, but SAP Ariba has its eyes on many industries. So what is it about the way things are done now that isn't good enough that blockchain can help improve?
Yeah, so Dana, as we spend years with Ariba solving procurement problems, we identify some of the ones that are the toughest, right? And when I saw Everledger, it dawned on me that they may have cracked the nut on one of the toughest areas of B2B trade, and that is true understanding, visibility, and control of asset movement. It dawned on me, too, that if you can track and trace diamonds, you can track and trace anything. I really felt like, based on that, we could team up with this young company and leverage the unique way they figured out how to track and trace diamonds and apply that across a huge procurement problem, and that is, how does a supplier and a buyer manage the movement of the asset after they've purchased it? How do we actually associate that movement of the asset back to its original transactions that approved the commit to pay? How do you associate a digital PO with the digital movement of the asset and then to the physical of the asset? That's what we really are teaming up to do. That receipt of the asset has been a dark space in the B2B world for a long time. Sure, you can get a ship notice, but most businesses don't do goods receipts. And as it flows through the supply chain, especially the more expensive the item is, that lack of visibility and control causes significant problems. One is, and I think maybe the most important is, overpaying for inventory to cover actual lost supply chain in transit. I talked to a really large UK-based company in the telecom industry, and they told me that if they could do this, what we're going to do with Everledger, with just their fiber optic, they could cut their buying in half because they overbuy their fiber optics to make sure they're never short on fiber optic inventory. That applies really across the board to all merchants and all supply chain, middle of the supply chain manufacturers. You start having a disruption to your inbound supply, that's going to disrupt your profitability.
So at its simplest, it sounds as if what we're really doing here is getting a highly capable means that's highly extensible to remove the margin of error from the tracking of goods from cradle to birth.
That's exactly right. And the internet is the enabler.
Cradle to death.
To cradle to death, right. The internet is the enabler because the blockchain is everywhere. And so now as the asset moves, you've got really cool stuff that Everledger's done and other things we're going to do together that's going to allow anybody from anywhere to post to the chain the asset receipt and asset movement. So a large container coming from overseas, you're going to have the chain record of every place that container has been. And if it doesn't show up at a dock, you now have visibility as the buyer that I'd have a true supply chain disruption. That chain being out on the internet at a layer that's accessible by everyone is one of the keys to this technology. The fabric of us connecting the chain, which we're going to be focusing on Hyperledger together. Everledger's been on the Hyperledger platform. This fabric that we're going to tie into is going to directly connect those block posts back to the original transactions, like the purchase order, the invoice, the ship notice, so that the companies can not just see where their asset is, but in context of the transactions that resulted in the shipment.
So the old adage, trust but verify, we can now put to work and truly verify. So there's some news taking place here at SAP Ariba Live between Everledger and SAP Ariba. Tell us a little about that and how you, two companies, one very small, one very large, are going to work together.
Ariba's all in on transforming the procurement industry, the procurement space, the processes of procurement for our customers, buyers and sellers. And we're going to partner heavily with key players like Everledger. Part of the announcement is this partnership with Everledger around track and trace, but not limited to track and trace. Leverage what they've learned and what we've learned across our platform of $1 trillion a year, 2.5 million companies trading assets with each other. We're going to apply this partnership to many other capabilities within that.
Leanne?
I'm very excited. It's a moment in time that I think I'll remember for years to come. Today, most especially, we made a keynote announcement with IBM on some of the work that we've done beyond the identity piece around objects, and that is to take the next step around ensuring that we have an ethical trade platform so that we are able to identify the asset but also know, for example, in the diamond industry, that that diamond has passed through the right channels, paid the dutiful taxes that are due as a part of that international trade platform, and ensure that all of that compliance is hardened within the chain. And so I'm hugely excited about the opportunity that sits before me, and I'm sincerely grateful that such a young company has been afforded the opportunity to really show how we're going to shine.
So when it comes to open trade, removing friction from commerce, these have been goals for hundreds of years, but we really seem to be onto something that can make this highly scalable, very rich, almost unlimited amount of data applied to an asset, a ledger that's, in a sense, a fluid, movable, yet tangible resource, right?
That's right.
So where do we go, Joe? If the sky's the limit, describe the sky for me. How big is this, and where can you take it beyond individual industries? It sounds like there's more potential here.
There is a lot of potential, and if you think about it, blockchain itself is a new evolution of the internet. We're going to be able to take advantage of that. The new evolution is it's a structured capability across the internet itself. It's going to be open, and it's going to be able to allow companies to ledger their interactions with each other. They're going to be able to actually, in an immutable way, track who owns what asset, where the assets are, and be able to then use that as an audit capability. That's all very important stuff to businesses. And until now, the internet itself has not really had a structure for business. It's been open Wild West. This structure for business is actually going to help. I call it trusted commerce because in the end, businesses establish relationships because they want to do business with each other, not what technology they own. One key fact about blockchain is that it's going to reduce friction in global B2B. And I always like to say if you just accelerated B2B payments by a few days globally, you'd open up GDP, economies would start growing dramatically. This friction around assets has a direct tie to how slow money moves around the globe and the overall cost and friction of that. So how big could it go? Well, I think that we're going to innovate together with Everledger and other partners and ourselves using the Hyperledger framework. We don't even know yet what we're going to do. We're going to add every buyer and seller onto the chain. They're just going to get it as part of our platform. We're going to then start ledgering all the transactions that they think make sense between themselves. And we're going to release a couple key functionalities like smart contracts. So their contract business rules can be applicable in the flow of commerce at the time commerce is happening, not locked up in some contract in some drawer or some PDF file. Those things we're going to start with. I don't know what applications we're going to build beyond that, but that's the excitement of it. I think the fact that we don't know is the big play.
So from a business person's perspective, they don't probably care too much that it's blockchain that's enabling this, just like a lot of people didn't care 20 years ago that it was the internet that was allowing them to shop online or send emails to anybody anywhere. What is it that we would tease out of this rather than what the technology is? What's the business benefit that people should be thinking about, and how should they get prepared to take advantage of this? Leanne?
Well, they want the digital trust, right? So, Leanne, why don't you share some of the things you guys have explored?
So in the diamond industry, you asked the question before about the problems in market. And so we have fraud related to document tampering, because typically paper certificates exist across the backbone. It's very easy to be able to transpose those into a PDF and make appropriate changes for self-gain. Double financing of the pipeline is a very real problem. Invoicing, of course, accounts receivable, have the ability to have banks, 2, 3, 4 times finance those invoices. We have issues with round-tripping of diamonds through countries where transfer pricing isn't declared correctly, and the avoidance of tax and duties. So all of these issues are the dark side of the market. But the ability to bring transparency around objects, particularly in diamonds, when you think about it, diamonds is the one commodity that's yet to have true financial products wrapped around it. Now, what do I mean by that? It doesn't have a futures market yet. It doesn't have ETFs. But the performance of diamonds outperform gold, platinum, and palladium. Now, you think to yourself, what does this mean? If we can bring transparency to the once opaque, have the ability to know that it's gone through an ethical chain, and then realise the value of that asset, then we can start to think about how new financial products can be formed around these assets. So we're hugely interested in rising asset classes beyond just the commodity section of the market. And we think that this platform, and we were talking before about the World Wide Web and how it's being transformed, I've often said we're going from the World Wide Web to the World Wide Ledger. And Joe's absolutely correct when he mentioned that the internet hasn't been woven for transactional trust, and we have the ability to do this now. So from a business perspective, you can start to really innovate on top of this exponential set of technology stacks. And a lot of companies quote Everledger as a blockchain company. I have to correct them and I say, I'm so sorry, but we're an emerging technology company. We use the very best of blockchain and smart contracts, machine vision, sensorial data points for us to be able to form the identity of objects. Now, why is that important? Most financial services companies have really been focused on KYC, know your customer. But we believe that it's KYO, know your object. That really gives an entirely new context around it. Now, that transformation and the relationship of the object has already started to move. When you think about IoT, mobile phones, autonomous cars, these are largely connected devices to the fabric of the web. But are they connected to the fabric of the transactions and the identity around those objects? So insurance companies have started to understand this. And my background in the last 10 years has been deeply involved in insurance. So we think that as you start to build and understand the chain of trust and the chain of risk, then tectonic plate shifts in financial services begin to unfold.
It's interesting, Joe, to look at this from a larger business history perspective. Many companies, as well as many economies, suffer through a boom and bust cycle. Have for many decades, and it's only been recently that we've been able to mitigate some of that. Sounds like with this true amount of veracity across all of economies and goods, that boom and bust cycle could be swept away into the dustbin of history. Or am I overreaching?
Well, I think it's good to overreach sometimes, especially when you're dealing with a technology that changes as much as blockchain does. But I want to kind of, for the audience sake at least, as we temper our excitement, I want to say it's not just about the chain, it's about the apps we build on top. And it's really about what is the value to the buyer and seller as we build those apps on top. To Leanne's point about it's going to be about the object. The funny thing is we've struggled to be able to, in a digital way, provide visibility and control of an object. And this is going to fix that. Because in the end, B2B, which is where Ariba is about, in the end, somebody getting something and paying for it. And that physical asset that they're getting is being paid for with another asset. They're just two different forms. By digitizing both and keeping that in a ledger that really cannot be altered, it will be the truth, but it's open to everyone. Buyers and sellers in a typical business process will get the equivalent of greasing the skids. They will get, maybe I would put it in the context of, they used to do green slopes, now they're going to be on a double black diamond, and they've just gone over the edge, and they can't stop. They're going to be going so fast. Businesses will have to invent ways to control how frictionless this is going to be. I'll give you a perfect example. In the past, if I told you I could do an international payment in 2 minutes for $1 million to somebody, you would tell me I'm crazy. With blockchain, one corporation can pay another corporation $1 million in 2 minutes, international. And on the chain, companies like Everledger can build capabilities that do the currency translation on the fly as it's passing through. And that doesn't disintermediate the banks. That makes the banks more important. Because how did the $1 million get onto the chain first? Someone put it on the chain through a bank. The bank is backing that digital version. How does it get off the chain so you can actually do something with it? It goes through another bank. It's actually going to make the banks more important. Again, blockchain's only as good as the external trust that it inherits. And so I really think we got to focus on getting chain out there and really building these applications on top.
Well, it's very exciting, and the news this week has certainly opened my eyes to a lot of more opportunity and potential here. We'll be talking about this quite a bit more, I'm sure, but I'm afraid we'll have to leave it here. Today, we've been talking about the major opportunity from bringing blockchain technology to business procurement and supply chain management. And we've learned how blockchain's unique capabilities can provide comprehensive visibility across global supply chains for far simpler verification of authenticity, security, and ultimately control. So a huge thank you to our guests. We've been here with Joe Fox, Senior Vice President for Business Development and Strategy at SAP Ariba. Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, Dana.
And we also want to thank Leanne Kemp, founder and CEO of Everledger. Thank you, Leanne.
Thank you, Dana.
And a thanks as well to our audience for joining this special podcast coming to you from the 2017 SAP Ariba Live Conference in Las Vegas. I'm Dana Gardner, Principal Analyst at Interarbor Solutions, your host throughout this series of SAP Ariba-sponsored Briefings Direct Digital Business Insights discussions. Thanks again for listening, and please come back next time.